Everyone, I need to apologize. We actually just went through the entire training and it just now died, so we didn't realize that until we were done with the whole training. I am alone now. It is just me. Laura and Devin have gone to do other work. So I will go over the rest of the training with you. But like I was saying before, the definitions here, we're not going to focus a ton on them, but they are important to go over. I found them to be pretty useful. Some of the ones that I do want to hit, there's three, because we will be talking about them quite a bit later. So E is one of the definitions here. So emergency behavior intervention, and it means the use of level 2 interventions not outlined in the behavior support plan, but used in emergency situations. We're going to talk about that more later when we talk about emergency behavior interventions. But ultimately, it just comes down to if a person doesn't have a level 2 or 3 intervention, but you still need to use restraints on them, that would be what is considered emergency behavior intervention. The same thing goes for F here, emergency rights restrictions. It means a level 2 intervention temporarily denying or restricting access to personal property, privacy, or travel in order to prevent imminent injury to the person, others, or property. Rights are reinstated when immediately danger is resolved. So this could be something like if a client does have a level 1 intervention and they don't normally have a sharps restriction, but they're angry and they do grab a knife, or it looks like they could get violent, that could be a time where you go ahead and you start a sharps restriction in that moment. And when things are calmed down, you allow that to be reinstated. Could be an example of that. So we're going to talk a little bit more. We're not going to focus as much on the emergency rights restrictions, but later we're definitely going to go into the emergency behavior interventions. Another one I wanted to focus on is this one here. It's under W, and the reason mainly is because we talked about it before everything died in the original training. We got into a good discussion with Devin, but it is W here. So response cost. So this would be, I'll go ahead and read it. Means a level 3 intervention removing previously obtained rewards, such as tokens, points, or activities, upon the occurrence of a problem. Removal of personal property is not approved. And this kind of makes sense. Any person that does different like token systems or point systems usually don't have things taken away. But if you are in a level 3 intervention, those things can happen with problematic behaviors. The part I wanted to focus on was the removal of personal property is not approved. And the reason for that I wanted to bring up was because in this instance, if somebody owns something, if it is their personal property, that cannot be taken away from them if there is a point where they are being acting out in a problematic behavior. However, we discussed earlier that in certain circumstances, personal property can be removed from somebody in a rights restriction, but usually has to do with a very, you have to have a lot of reason to take somebody's property away. So one of the things that Devin discussed when we, in our first training, was that what people can do to get around this, so rather than take away people's personal property, because it might be a very high incentive or reinforcement for them, what could be done then is the house itself, rather than the person, can buy certain things that can be used as a strong reinforcement for individuals. So, for example, if an individual does like playing video games, rather than having them go buy a PlayStation, what you do is you buy the PlayStation, and because they do not own it, that person does not own it, and you do, it can be used as a reinforcer for good behaviors. What we call that is programmed reinforcers. And so you can set up a certain structure of reinforcement. You know, if you clean your room, you can get an hour of the Xbox. That is something that can be used very nicely as a reinforcer, and that is actually going to be the second question. So, what are programmed reinforcers? So that'll be one of the questions that you answer later in this training. But really, what it is things that can be used to that you own to help reinforce good behaviors, and by not reinforcing with it bad behaviors, it will lead to extinction. So that is the second question. So continuing on, we're going to go over to here, levels of behavior intervention. And so I want to focus here on three and four really. So all behavior support plans shall incorporate positive behavior supports with the least intrusive, effective treatments designed to assist the person in acquiring and maintaining skills and preventing problems. Let me go into 4, and then I'll go into kind of why I think these ones are important. Behavior support plans must be based on functional behavior assessment, focus on prevention and teach replacement behaviors, include planned responses to problems, outline a data collection system for evaluating the effectiveness of plans of the plan. I wanted to focus on this one because this kind of reemphasizes the importance of safety care training. As Devin talked about earlier, it is a requirement. It's not something that is not just a good idea or convenient, but it is something that is required, and it's important to get done. One of the things that you're going to benefit from are going to be the things that you see here. The whole setup of the safety care program is to go from least intrusive to most intrusive. So if I had to place what the most important thing of safety care is, it is prevention. That is the big thing that is that safety care does. And we teach about what to do when a client seems to be escalating. What are some of the things that you can do to de-escalate? And we call that help, prompt, and wait strategy. Those are all things that we go over with all of the staff when you're in the training. We role play it so that they become as much of an expert as they can. We also talk about what the importance of replacement behaviors are, like why are they there? We don't just go over what reinforcement and punishment are. However, we hit hard on reinforcements. We talk about why they're important and what you're supposed to reinforce. So if somebody is acting out in a negative behavior, what can you do to replace that behavior and then reinforce it so that the likelihood of it happening becomes stronger. We do talk about planned responses to problems, and there is even a portion where we talk about the importance of data collection and evaluating the effectiveness of the program. So continuing on, so 7 here, behavior support plans that only include level 1 interventions do not require approval or review by the Behavior Peer Review Committee or Provider Human Rights Committee. So based off of the wording here, level 1 interventions don't require a review by any of the committees to start. However, if you've got a client that is at a level 1 and you feel the need to bump them up to a level 2 or level 3, before the behaviorist can even start to write out the behavior program, they have to get a pre-approval of the level 2, level 3 interventions from one of these committees first. And so that there are going to be plenty of times where one of you may be getting a report so that you can okay whether or not a certain client gets can start having a level 2, level 3 intervention. And so definitely something to think about. You're not only going to be dealing with rights restrictions, but you're also going to be dealing with things like this, dealing with level 2 and level 3 intervention plans. 10. So behavior support plans that utilize level 2 and level 3 interventions shall be implemented only after positive behavior supports, including level 1 interventions, are fully implemented and shown to be ineffective. A rationale on the necessity for the use of intrusive procedures shall be included in the behavior support plan. This is going right back into if you're going to go to a level 2 and a level 3, you have to show that level 1 was used on the client. It was practiced and things didn't work out. It was ineffective. And these are the reasons why we feel like we need to go to the next level, to level 2 and level 3, or level 3. So again, this is important because as human rights committees, and we want, this is going to be a question later on that we're going to have you talk about, but what we are trying to teach these clients how to be successful in life. And we can't do that if we are completely taking away everything from them. Rights, different freedoms that they have, privileges. We want to give them as much as possible so that we can teach them the skills so that eventually they don't need any of these things. And so no matter what, it could be completely easier to just say, hey, we're going to take all these different things from them, rather than take just a little bit. That might be the easiest thing. We might see a lack of behaviors happening, but it isn't a very good quality of life for them. We want to take away as little as possible from them and give them as much opportunity to be independent. And so definitely something to focus on there. Okay, we're going to go to another question now. This is going to be a little bit funner of a question. So the question is, Laura, our human rights person here, what is her favorite book? Now, she didn't give us one book. She gave us a series, and so that's okay. So the answer to that question is the Stormlight Archives. So the answer to the third question of what is Laura's favorite book is the Stormlight Archives. Okay. So under this section, we're going to go to one more thing. We're going to go to 15. Because again, re-emphasizing the importance of safety care. So manual restraints shall ensure the person's safety in breathing and circulation. Manual restraint procedures are limited to MANT system, the professional assault response training or part, or supports, options, and action for respect, SOAR, training programs. Procedures not outlined in the programs listed above may only be used if pre-approved by the State Behavior Review Committee. I do know that safety care is one of the things that is accepted here. It is accepted nationwide, as Devin said earlier, and later on we even talk about how it is under those accepted trainings. This is going to be one we talked about a lot also during the training. So under 1 here for review and approval process, the Behavior Peer Review Committee shall review and approve the behavior support plan annually. The plan may be implemented prior to the Behavior Peer Review Committee's review. However, the review and approval must be completed within 60 calendar days of implementation. So this might sound contradictory to stuff we heard earlier, but that's because it is only for level 1 interventions. Level 2 and level 3, you have to have pre-approval. But if you're doing a level 1 intervention, you do not have to go through you don't have to go through pre-approval or even approval at all. You can start it before the approvals happen. I'm going to go ahead and read the next ones that are that I think are worth talking about. So 2, the Behavior Peer Review Committee review and approval process shall include the following. And so here are the things that are going to be included in it. A confirmation that appropriate positive behavior supports, including level 1 interventions, were fully implemented and revised as needed prior to the implementation of level 2 and level 3 interventions. Ensure the technical adequacy of the functional behavior assessment and behavior support plan based on principles from the fields of positive behavior supports and applied behavior analysis. Ensure plans are in place to attempt reducing the use of intrusive interventions. Ensure that staff and training and plan implementation are adequate. Again, talking about, we're not trying to jump right into taking all rights away. We want to do as little as possible from them. So 3, the Provider Human Rights Committee shall appoint behavior support plans with level 2 and level 3 interventions annually. Review and approval shall focus on rights issues, including consent and justification for the use of intrusive intervention. We are going to set something up like this. There will basically be 2 annual human rights committees that we're going to have, and I'm going to talk about one of them later that has to do with human rights restrictions. But there also needs to be the times where the committee is getting together for level 2 and level 3 interventions that clients have, and have them reviewed as well. Let's see here. And so, again, I'll talk about that a little bit later, because we do have one that we're going to set up annually, and there's some information that's going to be important for it. So moving on to emergency behavior intervention. Emergency behavior interventions may be necessary to prevent clear and imminent threat of injury, of property destruction during emergency situation. So this is what I talked about earlier when we were going over the definitions. We were going to talk about it a little bit more. So these are cases, emergency behavior interventions, when a person with a level 1 intervention has to have used on them a procedure from either level 2 or level 3 intervention. And the reason for it is their safety. It's not something that the individual just jumped right into. And again, this shows the importance of what safety care is. If you've got a client that is frustrated and you've done everything leading up to the restraint from safety care, which means you have tried to redirect them with things such as the help strategy, the prompt strategy, the wait strategy. You did that for 30 minutes and it progressively got worse. The client then came and charged at you, and you jumped out of the way using safety care procedures, and you tried dodging it, and you dodged it, and they keep swinging at you, and then you have to jump right into a restraint that is taught in safety care. You kind of prove that you've done the training, you went through and you did everything you could leading up to the restraint, and you try to avoid it, but for your safety and the people around you, you had to jump into the restraint. Again, it's one of the important reasons to take on safety care so that staff is prepared for those kind of situations. 2, level 1 intervention shall be used first in emergency situations if possible. As I said, that's how safety care is exactly set up. We're going to jump to 6 here. So if you're wondering when is the right time that a individual might go from a level 1 to a level 2 or 3, 6 kind of explains that a little bit more. If emergency behavior interventions are used 3 times or for a total of 25 minutes within a 30 calendar days, the team shall meet within 10 business days of the date the above criteria are met to review the interventions and determine if A, a behavior support plan is needed, B, level 2 or level 3 interventions are required for the behavior support plan, or C, I guess there's a few there. So C, technical assistance is needed, D, arrangements should be made with other agencies to prevent or respond to future crisis situations, or E, other solutions can be identified to prevent future use of emergency behavior intervention. So this is kind of the criteria to follow if you are wanting to make the case that a person should go from a level 1 to a level 2 or level 3. Understand that when it says emergency, that should indicate that it's not something that's happening a lot. It does happen rarely, and because it happens rarely, there's not a need to jump to another level of intervention. But if it's starting to happen more often, that's when those kind of questions should be talked about. So as far as this whole training has been, we're done with everything from the letter that's signed to becoming a committee member. So I'm going to go to the final question, and this one's going to kind of sum up, I guess, the principles that we want for you as the committee members. And so the question is, what does it mean as a committee member to check yourself? What does it mean to check yourself? And the answer to that is really going to summarize why we wanted to have this training. We've talked a lot about already that these clients are people. They have disabilities, but they should have the same rights that you and I have. And there are certain instances where a right has to be taken away for their safety and for teaching abilities, but we should try very hard not to do that. And so if you're a committee member and and you are sent a human rights form to inspect and see if you agree with the human rights restrictions that are being implemented or want to be implemented, you need to ask yourself certain questions about, is this right? Is what's being asked by the client, is it reasonable? Is it something that if somebody in government or anybody did to you, would you have a problem with it? For example, we do know that people with disabilities, it's very common for them to struggle with regulating their eating. And so you can say that for safety reasons, for health reasons, we need to put a food restriction on them. And in some cases, that may be what is needed. However, I would like to point out that most quote-unquote normal people also struggle with eating and struggle with taking care of themselves. And though a doctor may tell them it's healthy, they still have the right to listen to the doctor or not. They know that they could be doing something better for their health, and they still choose to engage in their normal habits. We need to consider those kind of things when dealing with clients. If they've got restrictions with money, we can't say that we are going to take 100% of their money away. We need to be able to say that they are allowed to have petty cash. If you were put in a position where you were going to have all of your money taken away, whoever's taken away better have a very, very good reason as to why they are taking it. And so when we say, what does it mean as a Human Rights Committee member to check yourself, we mean exactly that. Is the rights that are asked to be restricted, is it reasonable? Is it something that you think would be something you wouldn't like if it was done to you? And so when those rights are taken away or restricted, we need to restrict them as little as possible. Rather than let an individual have all their money, maybe we cut it down to a certain allowance so that they can learn spending skills. If overeating is a problem, maybe we don't do the restriction for the sake of health, even though that could certainly be one of them. But we can even point out that their eating habits can't be sustained with the amount of money that they're receiving, and so they need to have that restriction. So that'll be the fourth question. What does it mean as a Human Rights Committee member to check yourself? So some announcements. I think Laura has already sent out a spreadsheet for you to fill out once you've done this training and answer the question. One of the things that we want to announce, so June 1st is going to be our annual Human Rights Restriction or Human Rights Committee meetings. So on June 1st, we will get together and we are going to go over all the human rights restrictions that your clients currently have, and we're going to go over them and we're going to reevaluate them. Now, even though this is going to be on June 1st, it doesn't mean that if you have new clients or something has changed with a current client where you need a new behavior, a human rights restriction, you can certainly send those in still. I will definitely be able to get those going. But we're going to have it set that June 1st is going to be when we have our annual meeting. The other thing that is important, and I'll have this attached to the training, and I'm sure Laura will send it out also, but it is essential, and I'm going to pull it up here. There is this form here, Human Rights Restrictions Meeting Notification. This, prior to June 1st, needs to be sent out to all of the individuals and their guardians that have human rights restrictions. This is going to be a really big thing when it comes to audits. If you do not have this signed, then it can be, once you're audited, you can get into big trouble for it. And so this is going to be a huge thing. If you get audited, there's no way we can backdate it or anything like that. So we may require that if you are part of the meeting and if you want to have rights restrictions renewed, this is going to be one of the things that you have to bring in to show that you did send it out to either the individual or the guardian. And they can decline to come, but it has to be at least shown that they did receive it. So there you go. Thank you, guys. I just want to let you know that really appreciate you. Having these committees, the way we have it set up is really nice. We are able to get things going quickly, and we just require then that as you take advantages of the committee and having them for liability reasons and for doing restrictions and behavior plans, that you also participate. And when you are sent out if you're sent out a form to sign, and I usually do it through text, it's usually really quick, that you do fill it out, because to be a part of the committee, you have to participate in the committee as well. So thank you, guys. Appreciate it, and I'll have this set up on Niche, and you can start filling out the questions next.